What's up, everybody? K Priest here. Just wanted to walk you through some production techniques that I found myself really enjoying on this new EP that's coming out at the end of February, particularly looking at the third track called Portage and the kick and rumble stack that I developed for that track. So let's dive in. All right, so here we've got Ableton open, and in Ableton, we're just going to start things off with the kick. So basic kick, 4-bar loop of this kick coming from my MPC, loaded it into the DAW later on, and this kick is, it's a little bit off kilter, which makes creating a rumble a little bit more challenging in techno. And the idea that I had was, rather than having like a sustained rumble kind of sound like you might associate with a 4 on the floor kind of techno track, was to go into the rumble itself and play around with syncopation a little bit. So if we solo the kick with the low rumble, we get this kind of effect, kind of this psychedelic, loose connection. It's a little, you can get lost in where the one is a little bit. And that's an effect that I was going for. So how do you get this sub rumble? Well, the processing on it is pretty similar to what you might find in other kind of sub-rumble processing workflows. So we've got this EQ, pretty steep EQ that's cutting out all of those mid and high frequencies. Then there are 2 reverbs that are put together, and this gives that sub-rumble this really, really long tail. And what's doing all of the work to give it that pulsating, syncopated feel is this trance gate effect. So before we get into what's happening in this trance gate effect, I'm just going to turn it off, and we can hear really easily what it's doing. This doesn't necessarily sound all that pleasant, but it gives you an idea. So what is this trance gate effect? Why do I think it's super cool? Well, it allows you to sequence the gating action that's happening, and it's tempo synced. So what does that mean? That means that I have a gate envelope on that really raw sound, and the gate is opening and closing at defined intervals to give it this sense that it's actually a separate instrument, when in fact this low rumble is taking its input exclusively from the kick. There's no audio, there's no MIDI that's going into this rumble. It's just the kick drum itself. So I thought this is kind of a cool way to make a rumble. What happens if we build in extra instrumentation using the same kind of technique? And that brings us to this mid rumble. This is going to be a little bit more quiet. It sits back pretty far in the mix. There you go. It's the same kind of processing technique. So there is an EQ. This EQ is cutting out the low and the high frequencies. And we've got that trance gate effect after a reverb that's allowing us to open and close, give us this sense of percussion. But again, all of this is coming directly from the kick drum, and we're just creating this really, really long reverb tail and telling the DAW when to open and close that sound. And the same thing happened on this high rumble section. So in the high rumble section, we're EQing out the lows and the mids, leaving just the highs. There's some extra EQing to really boost those high energy and high frequency sounds. And we've got that trance gate present again here. If I didn't mention it already, this trance gate effect is free from kilohertz, and I think it's kilohertz, and I think it's a really, really cool one that opens up a lot of sonic possibilities and sound design kind of strategies. So all together, this kick and rumble sequence sounds like this. Really gets things moving and gets you kind of, again, kind of locked in that psychedelic sort of groove. And in the context of the entire track, this is what we end up with that rumble. At this point, you do a little shimmy. You lock into that groove on the dance floor. So again, this is Portage.